G'day, mate. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Michael.
Michael.
Michael Hing.
What do you do, Michael?
And I am the host, or I'm one of the hosts of Channel 10's The Project.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Crowdworkcast. My name's Andrew Barnett. Thank you so much for joining me. First off, need to say a big thank you to everyone that came out to the Sydney Comedy Store on Friday night to see my show. I couldn't have been happier with, one, the show, two, the amount of people that turned up. It was an absolute joy to perform for you guys. And it was just a lot of fun from start to finish. I felt like the crowd were with me the whole way. So, couldn't be happy with how that went. And like I've alluded to previously on the podcast, that's a bit of a bucket list item, a bit of a dream for me when I started comedy was to do a solo show at the Sydney Comedy Store. And like I said, I couldn't be happy with how it went. So hopefully that will be on the cards again sometime in the future. So stay tuned for that. But for now, thank you so much for coming out to everyone that did. Now, today's episode is, my guest is Michael Hing. You might know Hing is from Triple J Radio. You might know him as the weekend host of The Project. You might know him as someone who's done a lot of work on both the ABC and SBS over the years. You might know him from his stand-up. You might know him from his podcast. He does a bit of everything. He's an absolute champion for coming out to do this podcast with me. He's one of those guys who I've just interacting with over the amount of time we've done comedy, and he's always fun to catch up with backstage. He's always good energy, good vibe. So this was a lot of fun having this chat with Michael. So if you do enjoy this, please like, subscribe, tell other people about the podcast, all that good stuff. Give his podcasts a listen. He lists them all at the end of the podcast, and give him a follow on social. He is at Hingers. If you're not already following me on social media, please do. Andrew Barnett Comedy. I'm making a real effort to put more stuff up there and get involved. And if you're enjoying the podcast, apart from liking and subscribing, interact. Drop me a message either on social media or whatever. Let me know who you'd like to see me chat to, and what you'd like me to ask them. Anyway, other than that, probably enough faffing around. Let's get into it. This is my chat with Michael Hing. Channel 10's The Project. How did you end up working on The Project?
I don't know, because it's like it's such a weird show because it's been on air for 500 years, and I just started there about 18 months ago. I was working in radio and did a couple of fill-ins. Actually, weirdly, the way I got the job was about 5 years ago. I was working at a different TV show on SBS, and they weirdly, kind of related to that, but also kind of separately to that, I fraudulently ran for the Australian Senate in an election many years ago, and was disqualified by the AEC. Nothing illegal happened as far as I know, but as part of that, I did an interview on The Project, and then I think they kind of liked me or whatever, and they thought I was funny, and so they had me back to a couple of little things. Anyway, and now I'm like the weekend guy on The Project.
Nice, man. So you started though. I'm trying to think. My first memory of meeting you, I reckon, would have been in maybe the 2010 Raw in that final. But I remember meeting you at the Comedy Store and being super impressed because you carried with you a moleskin notebook for comedy, and you're making. I'm like, man, this guy takes it seriously. He's always thinking about jokes. It was so intimidating.
I don't think I was like, I remember that Raw comedy. You know, it's weird. So Raw comedy is like this national comedy competition where it's like an open mic thing, and I remember that. The thing is, it's judged by like a panel of 3 people.
Yeah.
But it rotates through for the different heats. It's just, but no one wants to judge it. I've realized this on the other side. No one wants to judge it. No one's going to get dragged out to the Comedy Store on a Tuesday night to judge 15 to 20 open micers.
Hey, do you want to sit through a bunch of open mic comedy and have to pay attention?
And even worse than open micers, like first timers or bucket listers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not even people who like kind of dabble. It's like people who are like, the guys at work think I'm pretty funny. I'm going to give this a crack, you know, and they just get on stage and say the most horrendous things. But no one wants to judge it. And so they just, for years, they had this one guy judging it who at the time I thought was like a comedian or was like a comedy writer. No, it turns out he wrote for a boating magazine and was just interested in comedy. Like,
a boating magazine?
Yeah, he was a boating magazine guy. His name was Dom. Anyway, after the show, I'd gotten through the semi-finals, and he bailed me up and said, because when you're young, you just want feedback on everything.
Yeah.
He said to me, gosh, I didn't think it was very good, but the audience seemed to like it.
Oh.
And like, I don't know if you remember your Raw sets, but like I don't think I was doing anything particularly like weird or crazy. I was doing pretty standard, like set up punchline jokes. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Because when you're that young, you're not you're not taking big swings because you know what you're doing. Like
you're not trying to redefine comedy.
Yeah, you just know what it is. You're like trying to think I've heard jokes like this before.
Yeah. You're imitating the stuff that made you laugh,
exactly.
mostly.
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah, I know the exact the guy you're talking about too, and I had that same impression of this guy's must be a mover and a shaker.
Nah, it's just a guy who runs for a boating magazine.
Just a guy. There's another one. There's a guy who's I don't know if you've ever come across Sydney Critic,
dude.
That dude. Could you? Because I've noticed him in there. Yeah. So I've had him pointed out.
Sydney Critic is a mainstay of the Sydney comedy scene, both amateur and professional. He's never performed. He's just a guy who goes to gigs, but he goes to every single gig, and he's been doing so for about 20 years. So like when I don't know how you discovered him, but the way I discovered him, and this is a bit of an intense story, but is we used to do this theatre sports show, like an improv show at uni, and every like lunchtime or whatever, once a week on a lunchtime, we'd go to the bar and it'd just be like a bunch of drunk students and we'd like do little improv games, like whose line is it anyway kind of stuff. And it was the biggest comedy thing you could be a part of on campus. And the biggest night of all was the grand final, which was once a year, and we'd pack it with like 1,000 people in this bar, and it was just this beautiful night. One night, very sadly, after that show, a good friend of ours who'd performed in the show and was such a funny guy was walking home through Newtown, you know, was in a car accident and he passed away. And it was very, very, very sad. About maybe 3 days later, we were all hanging out at the bar and in a bit of a very sad mood, obviously mourning our friend. It was just before the funeral, and we were wanting to know if it had made it to the papers, if this kid who we were friends with, you know, his death had made the papers. So we were Googling his name, and it hadn't made it the papers, but we found an archive of a blog by this guy where he'd gone to, we used to run a comedy room at uni, and he'd been to every single a gig we'd done for like 3 years he'd been coming. So he would have seen 150 shows of us, plus all the open mics we'd been doing, plus everything. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? And then we became obsessed with this guy. So his name's Sydney Critic. He's an older gentleman, I'd say. He's in his 60s, white hair, kind of a page boy cut haircut. And okay, a couple of things. I don't know how deep you've gone on the Sydney Critic.
I like to I'll check in every now and then and send weird stuff. Like he went
screenshots of things, and
screenshots
into
of
the
things
group
to
chat.
people. Yeah, just to.
Okay, so he reviews comedy as a hobby. He does movies as well.
Yeah.
Everything. He always writes a review of what he thought of it out of 5, and then also what the audience thought, which I think is a great way of reviewing things. So he'll be like, me, 3.5, crowd, 5 or whatever. Like, you know. But, okay. So he's now on a blog spot. He used to be on MySpace. I'm obsessed with this guy. I love him. So he's like, it's genuinely great because it means there are reviews of all of our uni shows, and there's stuff even I don't remember, but I can go back and scroll through and find all like weird little sketches or things we did. So he used to have a little profile on his MySpace page, so you could kind of scroll through and see other things he was into that weren't comedy. 2 things about him. Because of industrial deafness, he's very hard of hearing. And also he has prosopagnosia, which is face blindness, which if you are a comedy reviewer, being able to hear the words people are saying and recognize faces is like very important. And so the first couple of years he was reviewing things, he was like, I have face blindness, and he would get all of us confused and stuff. Or I'd be like, I think they were talking about this, but I can't really. And I'm like, this guy is like reviewing at a degree of difficulty beyond anyone else. Like,
of all the things to pick as a hobby.
yeah.
It's like, you know what are the two biggest impediments I've got in life? I'm gonna choose a hobby that makes both of those critical.
It's so funny. I love this guy, and it also here's another deep cut. Oh, I don't know how he found this, but he has a bit of a I don't want to say sordid. He's got a bit of a kinky past.
Oh, really?
So he had a separate blog that was linked to from his original blog. The original blog was called Sydney Critics. Sydney spelled with an I, S-I-D-N-E-Y. And he also had a different blog that was about different sex clubs he'd been to. It was called like Bocce Chicken or something like that. I can't remember what it was called. It was something like random words. And
you know, I've just lost my afternoon here.
I think you might have taken it down now, but this guy I remember there was one review of like the Hellfire Club, which was apparently some sex club he went to, and he was lamenting how it wasn't as good as in the old days when it was like really crazy, and now it's pretty tame.
It's funny because I could see that because when you read his comedy blog, especially if someone's been around a long time, he'll have like he's not as good as he used to be.
Yeah.
I did a gig at it was a Mike in Stand, which is the new version,
new Mike in Hand,
version of Mike in Hand. Yeah. So, but who was on? Brendan Burns was on that night.
Oh, sure.
Ben Elwood was hanging around. So he had all these. Not only was it him talking about the nostalgia for Mike in Hand because it had just come back, but then it was also guys like that who he's known for ages. It's that he's got a bit real thing with Ben Angry Elwood, he calls him at the moment. It's so good. But and I love one of the other details I love is he's good for an extraneous detail in the like that affects his his review.
Experience, yeah.
Like I did one at the Cronulla Golf Club.
So he's going all over Sydney.
Yeah.
Right.
But the first little bit that he writes about was how it was kind of out of the way and hard to get to. I'm like, not for the people who are members of the Cronulla Golf Club.
Yeah. But he's like, that's true. He'll often critique like the sound system, the parking, the cost of the beers or drinks or whatever,
There was one recently I saw with a comedian show at the Comedy Store, and his quibble was it was one ticket price was X amount, but he thought it was more of a $10 less show. So, and he blamed the act who was and I'll tell you off the act whose show it was is not repped by Century, but he blamed Century venues for putting up the ticket price. It was great.
God. Man. So yeah, it's been about 15 years of doing comedy, something like that. Did you get to that year? Did you go to the national final?
No, I went to the state final.
I went to the state final as well.
Yeah.
And I think
that was the
Heggie won that. Luke Heggie won that, and then went on to win Raw. And it's like that year. I often think about like how that was pretty disheartening because I really wanted to do comedy, and I didn't get through to the final. And friends of mine who no longer do comedy who no longer do stand up, I should say, had gone through to the national final and everything. And I was like, well, if they could do it, why couldn't I do it? And then that year, looking at the final, it was like Heggie, it was like Ronnie Chang. It was like the most stacked final. And I'm like, fair enough. These people are all better than me.
Even that state final, like looking, because that Crookshank was in that.
Really?
Kappa was in
Far
that.
out. Jeez.
Like, yeah, there was a fair few people from that state final who are still kicking around and doing well. So it's I was talking to Crookshank because Crookshank used to do the thing where he dressed like a tree. I remember
he wore brown pants. Do you have a thing in your brain where you kind of remember every joke that's ever been said that you've ever seen? And it's like you have I don't know. I think comedians just have this thing where you have an encyclopedic knowledge of like open mic jokes you've seen like twice.
Yes.
But like you can't remember, I don't know, like your grandmother's phone number or whatever. Like,
you know what I'll do is when people tell me they saw a comedian, oh, we saw this guy, and I was like, they never remember the name of the comedian.
yeah.
So I'll try and work it out. But like, okay, so
What are the bits?
What jokes did they do? And then you just know it from there.
So Crookshank used to wear brown pants and a green t-shirt, and his opener would be, he would come on and say, do you ever get to a gig and realize you've come dressed as a tree? And it would crush.
In a way that only John Crookshank can do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So you, I think, too, were you were a big, well, as once again the open mic impression of people, like my first, other than the fact you carried a moleskin notebook and seemed very
pretentious,
seemed very, very like, you know, you took it very seriously and you were really actually working. You ran the comedy at Sydney Uni, was it?
Yeah. So I got into comedy through doing sketch and improv, and we would, in like maybe 2007 or something, it's 21, 22, we took a show to the Melbourne Comedy Festival. Now, anyone who has ever done the comedy festival knows the first time you go, you lose, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000. Like you just lose thousands of dollars, right? And so we were all at uni, and we took a semester off to do this, and so we applied to the student union for funding to take this, and like I think it was like, man, they gave us like $3,000. Like it wasn't much money. And you think because of that, it's like the people who are involved in that show, or over the couple of years you did that, are now like all like basically, most if not all of us are like comedy professionals. It was like me, Alex Lee, who's like hosting shows on the ABC, Susie Youssef, who works with me on the project and does it, he's in like Amazon shows and stuff. Ben Jenkins is who's a writer for the Chaser, and who now is like the head of development at Helium. It's like there's just like Steen Raskopoulos. There's just like a dozen people who were part of this thing that we went through. But when the uni, so I think if they'd just given us the money, it would have been worth their while just to like, all these people came through a cool thing, whatever. But they said to us, if we wanted the money, we would have to run a comedy room once a week for 52 weeks. Like there's every week of the year was the idea. And
which there's not people on campus 52 weeks a year.
Yeah, so we ran it through the summer actually by the second or third year we stopped doing that. But the first year we ran it like through the holidays and everything, through Stuvac, through exams. So there was some, nights where it'd be packed and have 120 people in this uni bar. And there were other nights where it'd be like 6 people, But we ran that for maybe like 5 or 6 years, and it was the best training ground because we got all of our fucking dumb ideas out there, all of the awful jokes we wanted to tell, all the horrible stuff. We got it out in a semi-private way before everything was filmed. And so we got all the garbage out, you know what I mean? You failed in private.
That's where I see. For me, that room was Starbar. Dante ran this room at Starbar, and it was open mic. He'd get 60 odd people in that little room most weeks. Like he for some reason he could sell a ticket even though it was just open micers. None of us knew what we were doing or whatever.
I was a DJ. It was a pretty fun experience.
Yeah, but then it was so far off the comedy scene that you could make all your mistakes.
Yeah.
Make all those mistakes that you need to learn from, and then they wouldn't cost you in the long run. In that,
I mean, you just need you need to. I don't know. I feel like you need to bomb. Yeah, all of us. If we like, maybe inherently we should know what works and what doesn't. But like in theory, you can work it out. But there's always just like stuff that, for whatever reason, there are competing things in your brain. You think it'll work for this reason, but actually you're ignoring it. Like if you just make mistakes, and you need experience bombing in front of real people, and you need to sense that rejection from a crowd to like learn to hone your craft.
I think you need to learn why stuff bombs.
Yeah,
like because you can know, like you can watch and imitate. Yeah. What's successful, but at that point you're not really putting your spin on it. You're not making it your thing.
Totally, and it makes me wonder about I mean, you see it now a little bit. I mean, this is just me sound like an old man talking, but you see it now when you see people who have gotten huge on TikTok or Instagram for non-stand-up, for just like sketches and stuff. When you watch them transition into stand-up, and when they're performing to their own audience, it's like they can still kind of control it. But when they're on a lineup night and only a third of the audience knows who they are and knows what to expect, you see that moment in their head, in their minds, where they're just like, "Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
the things I'm saying, the awful things I'm saying, aren't working." And but the thing is, I had that experience when I had 7 people who knew who I was. You know what I mean?
That's that.
And not that I feel bad for these people. They're rich and famous. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I just think it's very different now.
It'd be a hard thing to learn if you already have the profile though.
Totally. You're learning how to do stand-up when 1 million people follow you on Instagram, whatever, and you just have like constant scrutiny on you. And I think the high pressure is not something I would have crumbled.
Oh man, I probably would have had one bomb and never come back. Like you just don't. But there's a luxury in bombing in anonymity that I think a lot of people don't have now. I mean, there's still plenty of anonymous bombers. Don't worry about that. But some of them don't have it. So how did you? So you went from basically. So you put that on, and then you. So what were you studying at uni?
Oh, who knows?
What degree do you have?
I don't have a degree.
utilizing?
I dropped out of a lot of things.
Yes.
I like a lot of comedians. I started doing school counselling. That was the thing I really wanted to do. I wanted to be a school counsellor because I'd been to the school counsellor when I was in high school, and I had a fight with my parents or something or whatever, some classic teenage thing, and they were like, you should write a diary about your feelings, and I was like, that's a great solution, and it helped me. And so I thought, man, I can't wait to tell a bunch of kids to write a diary about their feelings. And then I did like 1 week of prac, and like obviously I had a very sheltered middle class upbringing. And then you do 1 week of prac and you realize that like, oh, the problems a school counselor deals with are the most horrific, most full on things affecting the most vulnerable people in the world. And it's not like, and writing a diary about your feelings isn't going to fix the fact that, I don't know, you can't see your mother because she's a drug addict and it's unsafe to be around her. You're being raised by all the most, your grandparents are legal custodians over you, but they're sick and like it's just the most full on stuff, And I remember the very real reality check I got the first time I was on prac, where I was like, oh, a poem will not solve any of this. you need actual help from a trained professional. And I'm like a 19-year-old who thought that like doing a drawing would help, like a fucking naive idiot.
I'm picturing you sitting backwards on the chair when they come in. Just, yo.
Far out. Well, I did I think I did like 2 weeks at the. I did a couple of pracs. One of the first pracs I did was at, I think it must have been like Cronulla Public Schools. They had an emotionally disturbed, or what they called back then, this is 20 years ago, they called it an emotionally disturbed kids unit, right? So these are kids who have undergone
trauma,
horrific trauma, and had really rough lives. And they're, and as a result of that, they obviously have behavioral issues, Yeah. There's kids who are like throwing chairs and the rest of, and there's I don't know if they were teachers' aides, but they were like big, muscly teachers' aides. You know what I mean? They're like basically security guards to the kids, trying to, and these are like 11, 10-year-old kids who are like trying to fight the teachers and stuff. Like it's really, really full on. And so I remember coming out from that prac and thinking like, maybe this isn't right for me because like, and I kind of regret that when I think back on it because I think I was just insecure because I was so shocked by what I saw and was so unprepared by it, by the university and who'd sent me there. And I guess, I think other people just went to like their local primary school, but whatever. I was so shocked by it that I was like, oh, there's no way I could ever possibly be good at this. Not realizing, and no one ever told me this, that you'll work on it. You'll get better. You're 19. Of course, you're going to fucking understand this shit.
Yeah, at 19, seeing something you've never seen and not
it's going to blow your mind.
You don't have context for it.
Yeah, so because of that, and also just because I was, spending too much time at the bar and hanging out with my friends, I ended up dropping out of uni and then trying a few other things. I tried to do like philosophy for a bit and like drama studies and just like trying to do a generic arts degree. I tried doing, I don't know, I was just like, just jobbing around. And then this comedy room thing started. And I remember it being, because I've been doing like improv and stuff. And then the first time I did stand up and was kind of like, I was like, oh, because I don't know what you were like around, but I didn't think it was an option. Like,
That's exactly my experience.
like the idea that you could do comedy was just not I didn't even think that was a possibility.
Well, I don't know about you. I just didn't know anyone who'd done it. I didn't like, you'd see it on like TV twice a year, and you'd be like, "Oh, wow,
that'd be great to do that." But you don't think like. And I remember a friend of mine was studying something at uni. I can't remember what she was studying, and she mentioned to me that she wanted to be a dancer. Like she wanted to be I don't know, like maybe not ballet, but like a modern dance, like a in a dance company kind of thing. And I was like, well, that's not a job anyone has, right? And she was like, what do you mean? Why do you think I'm at uni studying art? I'm like, oh, it's like, that's a thing.
Yeah.
So then I didn't, the actual, I kind of kicked around the unis and went from a classic uni dropout who went from studying there to running things at the student union. So then I while I was kind of running that room, I was like also booking bands and running like DJ nights and stuff like that. And then it wasn't until maybe like 2014 I decided to quit my job and try and do comedy full time. Yeah.
Wow. So how did because you've just finished up at Triple J this year.
Yeah.
How did Triple J come about?
It was Splendor in the Grass. So there's a guy called Dom Knight who's the he was involved with it. He's one of the guys from The Chaser.
Yep.
He's a radio host as well. In like 2012, he did a very, I'll say it, sad Facebook post saying, I'm going to Splendor. I've got a spare ticket. Does anyone want to come? And because it's Dom, he did like some self-deprecating thing. I was about to say self-defecating. Self-deprecating thing where he was like, I don't have any friends. Can someone come with me? And he was like a bit older than me, but I was like, fuck, I'll take a free ticket to Splendor. So I went to that. And I heard there was comedy going on there. So I went to go watch.
This is a story that at this point could go two ways.
Yeah. I went to go watch the comedy, and Dom introduced me to the person who was like running it. And then she was like, oh, well, Will Anderson's going to be on tonight. And I was like, I love Will Anderson, And then I think maybe, I don't know what, Will must have done a gig at the uni and seen me or something. So he was like, do you want to do a spot? And I was like, yes, Mr. Anderson, I'd love to. Like when you're young and you get an opportunity like that, you're just like, you're so focused on it, you're like, I'm going to crush this.
Hyped.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, so like, you work yourself into a frenzy.
Well, you don't realize at that point that a career is built of thousands of those moments.
Exactly.
You think this is the one, and then boom, career.
Totally. So I did the set, it went well, and then they invited me back the next year, and for the next couple, I've been sort of going back to Splendor for like a decade now. But after that first gig, there must have been a Triple J producer or something in there, in the crowd, and they thought I was funny and whatever, just some guy, and they were like, "Oh, we want someone on the ground to just do some like report of like what's happening at Splendor," and so they invited me over to the Triple J booth that night, whatever, the next day or something, to do a little chat, like a 5-minute thing on radio. And then like this is how slow the ABC works. So that was in like 2012. In 2014, I started doing mid-dawns there and like fill-ins and like overnights and weekends and stuff. And then was sort of just in and around the Triple J area for 5.5 years until I started doing Drive in 2020. So that's like a 7.5, almost 8 years between a producer seeing me and me getting a proper job there.
Wow.
That's how slow the ABC moves.
Yeah.
For a youth radio station. I started there when I was 35. Like, it's like, what is happening, guys?
But yeah, if you take 8 years, that's going to happen though, isn't it?
Of course, yeah. You're just waiting
this
in the
new
wings.
young kid. What happened to that new young kid we saw 10 years ago?
35 now.
Why does that keep happening? That's fascinating. That's really, that makes a lot of sense. I think, but that's any big organization. I've got this theory that any big organization that's sort of par for the course. Once you get over a certain size,
Yeah, you can't be nimble. You can't be flexible. You've just got, and also just like the back then when I started wanting to work at Triple J, the waiting list for people who wanted to work at Triple J and who were desperate to work at Triple J was, 150, 200 people long.
Yeah.
I think nowadays it's much shorter as people have realized I can just make a TikTok a day and be a millionaire.
Well, that's
it's different now.
I think that's the thing too. Is like all those things that when we started were the way to get into a career. Now are less and less valuable. Like
totally. Like they're letting me host the project now. You know what I mean? That wouldn't happen 10 years ago.
Do you know, like when you perform like at your shows, like if you're like doing a festival or you're doing a tour, where do you think the bulk of your audience come from?
So
there?
Funny. So a lot of comedians would say, "I'm a professional. I do the show to anyone who turns up." Not me. I will. I have been told by maybe half a dozen managers and room runners and everything, being like, "You need to stop doing this," and I can't stop doing it. I do little chats with the audience where I'm like, "Who's come from this? Who's come from this? Why are you here?" kind of thing.
No, I like that because I get curious.
Yeah, I know, but it's like, but so many people told me don't do this because they're like, it's important, it's good for you, but for the audience, it's like they're here for their reasons, and it doesn't matter. They're just here because they like you. And I'm like, yeah. This is, but unfortunately,
but why do you like me?
Yeah, exactly. I need to know. So I would say it's changed all over the years. Now I'd say like half the people who come are like Triple J fans, which is cool. That's really cool. And then maybe a quarter are like people who have seen me before do stand up or have randomly seen me at a night or something. It's like a huge chunk of people are just like live stand up fans who come along to stuff. And then the other quarter is like podcast fans. So, and then like maybe like occasionally I'll get some people who like me from the project. But because it's broadcast TV and it skews older and it's sort of like national, it's like if you go into the regions, Triple J and Project are much bigger proportions. But if I'm just doing like, comedy festival, whatever, there's not a lot of Project fans who come yet, but I've only been there for like a year, so that might translate to ticket sales later. But yeah, I was before Triple J, it was like all podcast fans, and now as the audience has gotten bigger, it's not as big. But that's the big thing is podcasts. I think that was kind of how I sort of was able to build any following. Really, was just doing podcasts since like 2011, 2012. And, because, I mean, you would know from this, it's just like people who listen to your podcast, if people like what you do on a podcast, they listen to it every week. And then by the end of the year, they've spent, 40, 50 hours with you. So you're actually sort of one way you're friends. Like,
it's much, and being someone who listens to podcasts too, it's much more intimate in that headphones. Yeah. It's like a conversation.
And or you're driving, like, I don't know if you do this, but when I think about like really funny moments in podcasts or really interesting things people have said or whatever, I have a sense memory of like where I was when they said that thing, Yeah. And you're like, I was driving to Canberra and I had to pull over because I was laughing so hard or whatever the thing is. And I remember exactly what the joke was and who was saying it, and those are and I have, 100 of those memories kind of thing and or whatever it is. And those are the things that make me go like, oh my goodness, as soon as that person's coming to town, I really want to go see them or whatever, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's different. It's fascinating. Like I did my show at the store on Friday night and
how'd it go?
It went well, man.
Yeah.
It went really, really well. And it was funny. It was I just got an email from Karen, so from A-List Management. She was just saying like, because she came and she just said, oh, really good. And she goes, that's the best I think I've seen you. And I think it was because I was so like what the store's like that. Just that it's beautiful set. And it's so comfortable there, and I just. And because I'd wanted to do like a solo at the store for so long, like I was like, you know what, you're going to enjoy this.
Yeah.
Like I just sat and had fun. But even then, like I still do the thing like at the start, like, oh, is anyone in from out of town? Mostly Sydney people. Like it was fascinating. Like I've got that part of my brain that's like, why are you all here?
Exactly. Well, yeah, because it's the habit for me started, and this is a very bad habit. And again, not that anyone's listening to this for advice, but if any young comedians listening, don't do this. It's fucking awful. But it started because every year I would do these like fringe shows where I'm like trying out new material. And they used to start off and I had written a show and I'd want to try it out. Now it's just like, I got a notebook full of ideas and I just try things out. So it's less and less effort, which is good because it's more and more useful and I can take bigger risks, all that kind of thing. But I became infinitely curious as to why anyone would come and see these fucking shows, right? Because it would just be me being like, fuck, I don't know, what about this? Like, what is it? Is there tiles? Are they funny? Like, just like dog shit ideas. And then you might get like half a dozen things out of it. And I became obsessed with like, why the fuck anyone would come to this? I'm like, what kind of sadist would come to like, to watch like a man bomb for like whatever? And so I got into the habit of asking it and I found that was a fun way to riff. And then I became obsessed with it. So I always ask it and I'm like, but it's just not, I need to stop doing it. But I won't. But I need to stop doing it.
Yeah, you know what I did on Friday night that actually, and it wasn't intentional, is I told a story about
You're riffing out new stuff.
Well, it's sort of, it was newish. Like, it was just in it to get from one thing to another. But I told this story about how, so my oldest boy now has seen me do comedy 3 times.
Hot damn.
And
how
all
old
3
is he?
times.
A teenager, right?
Yeah, 15.
Yeah.
So but all 3 times. Like, so the first one was at a function for Seniors Week at the Town Hall in Sydney.
So I'm sure you crushed.
COVID. So it was like, pictured Sydney Town Hall, mostly empty, but with the people, everyone wearing masks, a lot of older people, so just trying to get their carers to laugh, and so just not really in your favour.
Is this what Dad does?
Yeah, so that's the first time. Second time he saw me was on this. I just did a run of gigs with Jim Owen, and there was one night where we both were like, "That was really hard work," and that just happened to be the night he was there, and where it literally so. And then the other time was I did a spot at the NRL Grand Final at like a function there, which those sort of things just. Like it was fine, but it's never really set up for comedy.
People are there in spite of the comedy, not because of it.
There's a ceiling on how well you're going to do, right? So that's what I was saying. Like I was saying to the audience, I said, I think this is, and that was a way to get into it. But I said, I think this is a way. Like I do worry that he's looking, just going, I don't think Dad's very good at this. But when I mentioned when I mentioned that Jim Owen gig, that because it was funny because that was, and this is 100% true. I found it really tough, and then we go to the break, and I said, "Oh man, I think they're just here for you." Like, because some of his audiences, they're more,
of course,
like they just want to see Jim Owen. You're not messing. So, but then he got off stage and went, "Man, that was hard work." He goes, "I'm so glad you said it was hard work," because he goes, "Otherwise, I would have been up there sweating bullets."
I don't know if you do this or if you've talked to other comedians about this. I don't like bombing now, but there's a thrill in bombing now because it's a puzzle to work out afterwards.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I mean, I don't bomb very often now, or I don't bomb in a way that I can't explain, you know?
What now would you'd consider a bomb?
Would have been great 5 years ago. I would have been so happy with it 5 years ago.
Would have been fine.
But nowadays, you just have a bit more experience and you're like, and it can be little things like, it's like, oh, well, it's a dinner show and there are people eating dinner and they're facing away from the stage. Yeah. You're like, well, this is going to be tough. Or it's like, or there's a group in with a specific need or function or something that, that I didn't know about, or what, and there's a tension in the audience because of that, or whatever the thing is. And so I kind of like doing the detective work afterwards to like help my ego.
Man, and that was so Jimo and I were both like baffled as to what there was just it was one where there was no connection with the audience. Yeah. But the most beautiful moment is he comes off stage and we're just in the green room and he's going, "Man, I'm glad you said that," because he goes, I found that quite tough. And then Oscar walks down from the side of the stage in, and Jim Owen just turns to him and just looks and says, "Oscar, you have to understand your dad and I are usually much better than that." And so I told that on stage. But then as they're leaving, a bunch of people who'd seen me with Jim Owen, and that's why they'd come to the show, were going, "Was it this show? Was it that show?" And I'm like, "Nah, it wasn't that one. And so I was like, "Oh, that's a beautiful little totally unintentional, but got the thing." But that turned out too, because he had mates in the audience that night too, which I think maybe we were both super conscious of the fact that we had people we actually gave a shit whether we thought it went well. Other than the audience, you got to respect the audience, obviously.
No, but you've got a personal thing in this,
Yeah. But then when we went and sat with them after the show, went and said hi, they were like, that was amazing. Everyone loved it.
Because no one else was at the show on Wednesday. No one knows what the show is meant to be like. And so for them, this is the best version of the show they've seen because it's the only version of the show they've seen.
Are you at the point now where you've stopped trying to talk people? Like if you have people come along, it's trying to stop. Like I did this thing where if I didn't think it went that well, they'd be like, man, that was great. And I'm like, nah, what? Like you're almost trying to talk them out of their good night.
I usually, definitely that's a thing I feel. But usually what I'll do is I find myself just letting them talk and realizing that often in a show there is like something there's the thing that I'll think of, which is like, oh, I messed up the wording on this joke or blah, blah, this didn't hit as hard as usual. I don't give a fuck about that. But there'll be like some crowd interaction or some heckler or something that they're like, that's the craziest thing in the world. And to me, I'm like, I don't care what that was. Like that was on them. I don't care. And they'll be so it's like no, everyone has such a different perspective, and it's like we're in our own heads. Who cares?
I did one of those Jim Owen ones, and it was a real long room. And we didn't realise, like, we weren't getting much of the noise from the back of the room. And so I'd said something, is anyone here like this? And it was all pretty quiet. But and then I had mates who were sitting up towards the back of the room. They go, man, you should have people are shouting, yeah. I'm like, I couldn't hear.
But it's such weird things that can affect it. Like, there is a venue at the comedy festival I did this year called the Swiss Club. And it's in Melbourne, and you got to climb up 6 flights of stairs to get into it and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's pretty, it's a pretty kooky room, but the way it's set out is it's like a big room and split in half by a curtain. On one half of the curtain is the audience and the comedian. That's where the show happens. On the other half of the curtain is the green room, and it's quite a large green room. It's a weird layout of a room, but what it means is there's a lot of curtains that kind of like create the space. And the curtains don't reflect the sound. So the laughs go straight past you into the green room and they don't bounce back. And so in a room of that size, you kind of your brain subconsciously knows the volume of laughter you should be getting in a kind of a tight space.
Yeah.
But because there's 50 or 60 square meters of other room around you that your brain can't see but is physically there, there's like a hollow echo to the room that makes you. The first couple of nights doing the show, I was like, oh, this show is bad and I'm not funny. Like,
Well, meanwhile, there's, the person who's doing the next show sitting in the green room go, geez, Hing's killing.
Yeah, exactly, because they can hear that. So then, because at the comedy festival, if your venue isn't wheelchair accessible, once a year or once in the month, you do a show that in a different venue that is wheelchair accessible or so people can come and see the show if they need a wheelchair. And so usually often those are in the town hall, and those rooms are like solid, like, I don't know, like sandstone and brick built in like the, I don't know, 1830s or whatever, like just like
perfect hard surfaces.
Yeah. With like, polished wood all over along the floors and stuff. And so
never mind that they were built in a time where there wasn't amplification and they were all for meetings. So it's all designed to...
Impeccable, right? So I did one show in that, and it was the exact same show, but in just that room. And the show, just because I was waiting for the laughs to die down, the show ran like 10 minutes over. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is... that's just the... And it's like... But if anyone had seen the show there or had seen the show at the Swiss Club, they would have thought it was the same. They would have... To their minds, same show. They would have been like, it's great. But to me, I'm like, well, I'll only do this room now. This is...
Yeah. Right. Town hall for me.
Yeah, exactly. It's so pointless.
It's funny how much... Because it is... I think that's like... The audience don't know, but it is because part of the joy of live is you are trying to feed off their energy.
Yeah.
And it's so much more fun when there is energy to feed off.
Yeah. So if you're going to... If you ever see a comedian do a show... The best thing you can do is go to them after the show and just be like, okay, well, like I thought it was good, but how did you feel about it?
Yeah.
Like really let them spiral into anxiety of the show.
If you do say that you thought it was funny too, really hit the eye like other people didn't.
I thought it was funny.
Look, I thought it was funny. There's nothing better. Or if you go see a lineup show, make sure you tell them which comedian you thought was best, especially if there's a couple of them standing next to each other because they're not friends. Don't you love that when people come up to you and go, "Oh man, that guy"? You're like, "Oh, you mean the guy I've known for 10 years? You're a guy who, yes, you enjoyed my comedy, but we've just met. That guy and I are friends. We catch up for lunch, and he is funny. I don't care what you think."
Yeah, because often it's like, I mean, comedy is so subjective, and often it'll be the smallest thing that'll turn someone off. Someone will be like, "Oh, they mentioned lettuce, and I think lettuce is. I have a different opinion, therefore I don't like them." And you're like, "This is so like, you know."
Oh, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
It is, and then that's the.
But obviously, they're also not wrong. Like you're allowed to not find people funny. That's fine.
Yes.
Like you know.
Yeah, that idea that it's supposed to be for everyone is, and that's. I don't know. Like I used to, and that's a big change I've had recently where. I used to try and get everyone in the room. And sometimes now I'm just like, oh, no, this isn't going to get everyone on board. But that's and you realize that the people, if you just do what you find funniest and try and just make that the funniest for whoever's going to get on board, those people will come see you because they really like
Oh, totally. They'll get on board with what you're doing. And the thing that I don't remember who this was, but it was like some older comedian when I was just starting out. They were just in the generation above. It would have been like,
they were probably 27.
Yeah. But it would have been like, I don't know, Daniel Towns or Dave Jory or like one of those guys.
One of those guys, who'd been going ages when.
Yeah, like, had been probably doing it for like 3 years or something. And I was like, oh, genius. They said to me something like, I don't remember how they said it, but basically the thing was like, the moment you start focusing on someone who's not enjoying it, or the moment you think about your time, or the moment you think about anything that isn't the jokes, the audience realizes you've broken the connection with them. So the second that so often I think about that with time, like when I'm, we've all had this experience where you've got a 10-minute bit you're running, but it's a 7-minute spot, and so you're rushing through it. They're like, the audience can tell you're not there with them. You're thinking about the time. You're thinking about what bits to drop. Or the moment that you're saying this guy in the front row, he's got his arms folded and whatever. The rest of the audience, it's not that they go, oh, I know what's going on in his brain. They just realize that you're not present there, or you drop the connection with them because you're no longer thinking about how to relate to these people, right?
Yeah, and they're sitting there going, "Well, no, like you're focusing on the one guy who you think's not enjoying it. Yeah. Everyone else is, no, but we are enjoying it. Let's just keep having fun together."
So now, I mean, obviously, you evolve this over time, but now I see if someone's not enjoying it, I'm like, I'll ignore it unless there's a funny way to bring them in and then they can be part of the crowd work. But, you've just got to realize that sometimes someone has brought their grandfather to the show and he's not going to have a good time, and it's fine.
And it's not their fault.
No.
They wanted to have a good night. They're just not going to.
Well, really what they wanted to do was, catch up with their grandchild.
Yeah, well, that's...
Instead, they've taken them to comedy shows.
That's the other one. Like, you do those, so, you ever do like a corporate or something where you're just you're the 20 minutes or 30 minutes in the middle of something else.
I'm the king of eating shit. I don't. Yeah. I will take corporate money to bomb to So there's, if you just listen, you don't know about corporate comedy. There's like gigs where everyone, I guess, chooses to be there, and then there's corporate shows where it's like the boss is like, we're putting on an awards night or a party, and so we'll just get a comedian to do gear for 20 minutes in the middle. And the people who are there, it's like they're at work drinks, and now there's a person yelling at them about, I don't know, bus stops or whatever at their work drinks. And like, I just want to hang out with my friends and complain about the boss or whatever. But instead, like Michael Hing's here being like, hey guys, what's the like?
And that's where, like, when I do those now, I'm just like, yeah, this is, you know what? I'm not going to take it personally. You don't have to listen. For the people that want to listen, they'll enjoy it. But
I've got a pretty horrifying. What's the worst one you've ever done?
Oh man, I don't. I'm pretty good at blocking.
Oh, blocking them
out.
Yeah.
And plus now I'm lucky in that I'm getting booked for ones that suit my
sure people like
who I am and where, like, my comedy. Like the people that book me are pretty good at going. So for some reason I do a lot for plumbing.
Interesting.
The plumbers
like you.
Plumbing supply. Yeah, the guys that spent their youth digging ditches and standing in shit don't mind a bad performance. They're happy.
I did one. Oh, look, I don't want to talk shit about him. I did a gig maybe a year ago now for a group. There was something like it was like an industry association kind of thing, some sort of awards night or whatever. And the MC was like a local weather guy. Like it was out of town. Like I had to travel for it, and everyone who was at this thing had been drinking since like 4 p.m. So they were like, fuck, they were munted. There was like 600 of them. They were absolutely munted. And he was having a rough time. People were like heckling him and stuff. There was a DJ who, like, I think was meant to play entrance and exit music, but because the night was going so badly, the DJ was just DJing throughout the whole night.
Yes.
Refused to turn it down. The MC was trying to hand out awards, but the DJ wouldn't stop DJing. Anyway, it was just, the whole thing was a nightmare. I went on. I did 20 minutes. And in this kind of thing, after 5 minutes or 3 minutes, you know you're bombing and you know this isn't going to go well. But you're like, I still need to get paid.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sit here and do my 20 minutes.
There's a contract here.
Yeah, exactly. And I was saying at the end of it, 20 minutes, I don't think a single person realized I was doing stand-up comedy. Like it was just, they were just like, is he giving a speech? Is he what? I don't know. So I mean, there's so many things that were terrible.
But I got introduced at one once just by the guy going, Andrew's going to talk for a bit now. It's like, oh, thanks for the context.
At one point, so sometimes with these corporates as well, they'll feed you. You'll get a dinner, especially if it's a special dinner. They'll give you a dinner as well, which is always nice. But the dream scenario is they put you on a table with like other like funny people from the accountancy firm or whatever, and you get to sit on a table with like some pretty cool people and have a dinner with them. That's the best scenario. The second best scenario is they give you your dinner in the green room. You just get to eat it by yourself, and that's also that's also private and it's nice. And
go over your notes,
exactly.
Just steal yourself.
The worst thing is what happened to me, which is they just served me dinner when they served everyone else dinner, which happened to me while I was on stage. And so like 15 minutes into the set, a woman just walked on with like a chicken parmesan or whatever the fuck, and like walked on. I was like, "This is for you." And then there wasn't a table. She just put it on the floor, and I'm like, "What am I going to do with this?" Like, I don't even eat meat. This is a nightmare.
Look. I know you seem busy now, but if you, try not to talk with your mouth full, but keep going. That's the other thing too. Is like you're trying to make people laugh when they're eating. That never works. And, like mouthfuls and
then the next day, I was like talking to my manager about it, and I was like, I just said the same thing. I was like, I don't think anyone realized I was doing stand-up comedy. And then as I was talking to her, I was like checking my Instagram DMs, and a person was like, "Hey mate, was at the gig last night. Are you okay?"
Are you okay? Wow.
Just like a nice person checking in, being like, "Hey dude, that seemed rough."
Yeah. Oh man, I haven't. I'm trying to think of the bad ones. I haven't really lately. I've been like I said, lucky, but it's because I'm getting booked for the right ones, which is where you like. I one of the first ones I ever did was for a company that did they like run nursing homes, so they're not the guys. Okay. They're like the big company that own a bunch of nursing homes, and the guy beforehand was talking about how they've had a really good year. They've got the best uplift rate.
What's an uplift rate?
So the uplift rate is how quickly they can turn. So when you buy into a retirement home, you basically buy it's almost like a long-term lease. You buy the pain in. Yeah. But the time that you're in there, then they get to resell it.
Okay.
The shortest time is obviously the best profit. But that means that if you go into a retirement home then you're not in a retirement home anymore, it's not because you found the fountain of youth.
Yeah.
And he was bragging about how, we've got the best uplift. I was like, and then gave me a list of stuff I wasn't allowed to joke about. I'm like, dude, I'm not taking moral pointers from you.
I've got so many horror stories of corporate gigs. I did one when I just started at SBS, and I don't even know if I'd started there yet. I was like, it was like maybe the summer. They were going to hire me, but it was the summer beforehand or something. And I was doing like their end of year thing. And there's an awkward thing that'll happen where people who don't understand comedy, they will want to bring you in on the in jokes that they have as an office. And sometimes it's fine, and sometimes it's like
Rip into Robbo. He just got divorced.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
No, I don't know him. Eh?
Okay, so they gave me a list of things, and like the boss always wears, I don't know, it was like the boss wears wacky shirts, and such is a cheapskate, whatever funny things were. And then they're like, but they were like, this guy called Barry, I think it was Barry or something. They're like, he's like the funniest guy. He's the biggest like clown. You've got to make fun of him. He's such a blah blah blah. And they gave me a list of all this stuff about him, right? Like, it was like he's like they call him a virgin, and like it was stuff about like how he has crushes on all these girls at work, and no one wants to date him. Blah blah blah. Like it was like stuff that you could easily work with to make fun of someone, and he's got a bad haircut and all this kind of stuff, right? He's tried to kill himself twice. So what they didn't mention, which is because SBS is so woke. Yeah, it's like they treat everyone the same, obviously, or they try to. What they didn't mention is that this guy was also in a wheelchair, right? Oh, and I'm like, that is context that I need to. Yeah. So I turn up without that.
Where's this idiot?
Yeah, I'm like, where the fuck's Barry? This fucking virgin loser. And everyone's like, it's Barry. And they're pointing to this guy in a wheelchair, and I'm like, what the? And I'm like, Barry seems like a cool guy. Like, just because, and obviously, like, in a perfect world, I would be able to make fun of someone in a wheelchair as I would someone outside of a wheelchair. But it's like, if I don't know that going in, then
and also you need to know the person.
Exactly. I don't have that relationship with him. I'm not just like,
where's this line?
And I don't know how comfortable he is with this. And I don't it's just like, we're not friends. I've never met this guy before. I didn't know he was in a wheelchair. Anyway, it was just, and I was like 25. I just started doing comedy or whatever. I was like, so, anyway. It was,
all the comedy rules of don't punch down.
Yeah. Meanwhile, like, video footage of Michael Hing just like, and this guy in a fucking, like, just
also,
going him or whatever. Like,
out of context. That is horrendous.
Oh, check out this fucking version. I mean, no one wants to fuck him. I wonder why. Like, it's just like, oh, God. Ugh.
Oh, man. That would be a nightmare. I don't. Especially at a place where you're hoping to work.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, hey guys, can you hire me? Anyway, here's a bunch of jokes I have about disabled people. Like, it's just.
Well, not disabled people, disabled person. Look at this idiot.
Yeah, Barry's.
Oh, man. That's not an ideal situation.
Makes me sweaty.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's, once again, context, people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, why would that matter? And you seem like the bad guy for noticing that that's a problem.
You're like, this fucking, can you treat him differently, are you? I'm like, oh, God.
Come on, man. What do you got against Barry? Just because he's in a wheelchair, you won't roast him.
Oh, God.
That's phenomenal. Mate, now, so before, because we are getting towards time, before we go, podcasts, all that. So what podcasts have you got going on?
Oh, sure. So there's two. Oh, there's so many now. So there's the latest one is called Silver Bullet. It's me and my former radio partner Lewis Hobber, doing a podcast about wellness, which is very trendy nowadays. Obviously, basically, we will road test any wellness trend, any Gwyneth Paltrow goop artifact, we'll give it a crack just to see what it's like and road test it.
Love it. There's so much range too with the wellness stuff because there is your Gwyneth Paltrow end of it and then there's your Joe Rogan end of it.
Yeah, so we've done both. We've done versions of both ends of the spectrum. We have done. Like, we basically get a guest on and they pitch us an idea. Like, Grace Tame came on and she told us to try hot yoga, so we did that. We've done... Tom Cardy came on, who people might know from his TikTok accounts. He came on and he told us to eat the diet of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for a week. So I gave that a crack.
I was going to say, you are looking rich.
Thank you so much. It's like a kilo of cod a day.
Oh, jeez.
It fucks me up. And then, so we've done... Abby Chatfield came on and told us to get our jaws massaged. So so it's called Silver Bullet. It's real fun. And we've just finished season 1 and season 2 is going to hopefully, I think, kick off pretty soon. That's with the ABC. And then there's another one. I'll only plug the other one. It's called Free to Good Home, which is about classifieds and Craigslist and Gumtree and the freaks you find on there. And just, that's been going for like 10 years. That's with my friend Ben. And that is really fun. We just it's a fun little riff fest. There's not it's not very well produced or anything. It's just like hanging out and mostly talking about people who are going to get sucked off on on Craigslist.
Which is the old school podcast format. Not
Yeah.
very well produced. Just
hanging out.
hanging out, and
yeah.
it's you're part of it. You're listening in. You feel like you're part of a chat that
Yes. Yeah.
you're just sitting there very quietly for.
Yeah.
Have I? Because I've seen you with some D&D stuff.
Oh,
and
sure.
my-
The D&D stuff, that's still going as well. That's huge. But I was like, is that? Yeah, it's called Dragon Friends, and I think we're in about season 9 or season 10 of Dragon Friends now. It's comedians playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it's that is more popular than anything else I do, and I cannot explain it at all.
Right. Now, how? Because my kids are into D&D.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially the younger one at the moment he's probably more obsessed. The 15-year-old's
He's
still
cool.
into
He's
it,
cool
but
now.
he's obsessed with his guitar a bit more.
Right.
But the younger one, and he listens to D&D podcasts.
Yeah,
for
right.
a 13-year-old.
Sure.
Am I?
No, it's probably not okay for a 13-year-old.
Okay.
Occasionally, people will bring their older teenage kids to the show, and even then, it's a bit. I feel a bit. But I mean, you can parent your kids however you want, But I feel a bit uncomfortable sometimes when I'm talking about fucking a goblin or whatever, and there's like a 16-year-old boy in the front row. I'm like, I don't like this at all. Hey kid, just so you know, this is all make believe and none of it's real.
But and it's funny because at 16 they're probably
Of
they're
course,
having those jokes with their mates.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be the
I
grown-ups.
don't want to be a creepy guy who's almost 40 being like, I'm oh, God.
Guess what, kid? You never grow out of this.
The goblin's got a weird dick. Well, anyway, that's called Dragon Friends. That's a real fun podcast if you're into D&D.
Because D&D sort of, I don't know, were you into that as a kid?
Never. So the point of the podcast was one of us, our friend Dave, who sort of he runs the show. He's what they call the Dungeon Master. He was really into it, and none of the rest of us were. So it's like me and a bunch of improvisers and comedians and TV writers and everything and radio people. We just do these shows once a month or so. And they started off just as an improv thing we wanted to do, and then it became like a podcast and everything else. And but the joy of it is this guy who's so passionate about Dungeons and Dragons and a bunch of comedians refusing to play by the rules and refusing,
nice.
And we're slowly bullying him into insanity.
Because I will say, because I was never I didn't. It just wasn't a thing when I was a kid.
Yeah, you're a jock. I get it.
Yeah. I was just out there getting chicks and stuff. No, I was a nerd, but my nerdiness was cricket. I was instead of sitting.
You're in the Wisden cricket.
Yeah,
stats,
with Greg Chappell cricket. I had the Greg Chappell cricket. The brochure would come out every year. You get it mailed to you, and you go through and look at this. It's just a different style of nerdiness. But it was funny when they got into it because they got into it out of Stranger Things.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And then they decided they wanted to get into it. And when I started to just take a bit of an interest in what they were into and what they were doing, I realized it actually just is really good storytelling.
It's just fun storytelling, yeah.
And teaching them how to basically storytell. So I'm like, I get what the appeal is and I get why. And you can do anything in the world. It's real fun. It's a really great fertile ground for comedy because it's all made up and you can say and do things, horrible things that obviously in real life would be awful and criminal. But if it's to a bunch of elves, it's like, who cares? These are all made up. It's like a cartoon, It's like, it's fine. It's like a good caste system.
Yeah.
Got to keep those elves in line, Oh, mate, before we go, then plug anything else you want to plug and then...
No, just I don't know. This podcast is pretty good. Keep listening to it.
And you are on socials.
Oh, yeah, at Hingers if you want to find me anywhere. Yeah.
Beautiful. Mate, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Cheers.